So I know I like the badass decks like Chimera and the edgy decks like Branded, but it turns out my pet deck of all time is Madolche. Hey guys, Otaku here, back with another Infinite Forbidden format video. So Infinite Forbidden has a lot of really good cards coming out, and for the most part, everything is kind of being swept under the rug thanks to the Fiendsmith cards. But alongside the Fiendsmith cards, we of course have the Millennium Engine, we have Whitewoods, and we also have Madolche support. Madolche is one of those decks that's just kind of always been expensive for no reason, because it's just kind of a fan favorite deck. And I am no exception. I absolutely love this deck because it's just incredibly fun to play. It kind of runs back to an old style of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it just locks you into its archetype, and really there's no reason to play any other cards other than its own archetype, with some minor exceptions. So today we are going to take a step back from the meta-heavy, badass, edgy decks, and take a look at one of the absolutely most adorable decks in the upcoming format that is easily going to be a very strong rogue option, Madolche. But before we do, I have noticed that a great deal of you are not already subscribed to the channel, and if you like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh style content, then be sure to leave a subscribe on the channel to support me so I can continue to make videos like this one. But also be sure to hit that bell button so that way you can get notifications on future videos I upload, and also like the video and comment your thoughts on today's video. So just like the Chimera Fiendsmith video, we are going to be starting with the combos. The perks about Madolche is that it's just like a deck full of extenders essentially, and for the most part they can play around a great deal of hand traps as long as you have the appropriate hand to do so. The flaws to Madolche is pretty apparent. They need their normal summon, and if they don't have Salon in their opening hand and you negate the normal summon, there's a good chance they aren't recovering. And because we are in a 21 hand trap format, it's gonna struggle, but it's not entirely dead. The brand new support gave the deck something that it absolutely needed, which was the ability to set up very strong end boards that could actually be hard to crack, and then also it has a little bit of go second potential, something that Madolche has always struggled with. That being said, it still struggles going second, but it does stand a little bit more of a fighting chance this time around. So the best starter in your deck, of course, is going to be Madolche Pending Sasur, because it is the one card combo that does not consume your normal summon as long as you have no monsters in the graveyard. And on top of that, it is a very powerful extender. The only downside, it locks you. However, if you do open Madolche Pet, you do kind of have a way to play around Nibiru, something that Madolche don't like. The candy treats don't like getting smashed by a giant rock. So we're going to start by special summoning the Madolche Pending Sasur and using its effect to special summon the Madolche Pudding Cess. With Pending Sasur, Madolche Pudding Cess is lowered by 1 level, so it is a level 4, allowing us to Xyz summon into the Madolche Teacher Glass Souffle. The reason this plays around Nibiru is because it can make itself or another Madolche on the field immune to monster effects. So if you have the opportunity to be hit with Nibiru, you can make it immune with the with its own effect, and then hopefully still be able to extend. It is key though that when you do make this to start your combos to try and play around Nibiru, you have the Madolche Pudding Cess as material, because without the Madolche Pudding Cess, you're not going to be able to extend further. But then we will normal summon the Angeli, because at this point we are safe from Nibiru, so we're going to try and play around that. Use its effect, tribute itself for cost to special Madolche from the deck. We will special the Hoot Cake, the classic combo. Use Hoot Cake's effect to target the Angeli to banish it from grave to special summon Madolche Messengelato. Messengelato will then activate its effect because we do control a Madolche Beast monster. To be able to add a Madolche Spell or Trap from deck to hand, we will add the Salon. Salon is easily like the best extender in the deck because it gives you a second normal summon as long as that second normal summon is a Madolche monster. And then also it lets you set a back row when a Madolche is returned to the hand or the main deck from your graveyard or field. We will then activate Madolche Salon, so that way we can continue to play further. And then we'll use the Glass Souffle to detach a material. This is important because what we're about to go into, we are going to need a Madolche monster in the graveyard. We'll use its effect to target the Hoot Cake, make it immune to monster effects in case they want to be cheeky with like Veiler or Imperm. Glass Souffle also being on the starter does make it so you can kind of dodge target negation as much as possible. So that way you can kind of continue to play, because if your opponent had an Imperm, a Ghost Mourner, or a Veiler on any of the other summons after you summoned her, you can use her to kind of make yourself immune to monster effects so you can continue to play. But like I said, we're going to detach. We are not going to use her second effect, at least not yet. And then we're going to overlay rank up into the Madolche Pudding Cess Chocolate a la Mode. We're able to do this because it's just a rank 4 Madolche. We're going to then use her effect to target the Petting Cess Sewer in the graveyard, shuffle it back into the deck on a new chain. Because Salon is mandatory, it's going to be chain 1 because a Madolche was shuffled back into the deck. And then for chain 2, we're going to go Chocolate a la Mode's effect and detach 1 because we have Pudding Cess's material. To special summon a Madolche from the deck. We're going to special summon a Gelato, so that way we can use its effect again, because it is not a once per turn. We just have to control a face-up Madolche Beast monster, but then we are going to set Madolche Ticket. On a new chain, we will go Gelato's effect to add another spell or trap. In this sense, we're going to use its effect to add the field spell, and then we are going to activate the ticket, so that way we can get its mandatory effect here momentarily. We're going to go Link 3 into the brand new Link 3 monster, Madolche Mugnard Macaron, or Meowcaron. We're going to use its Link Summon effect to add any Madolche monster or Madolche card from deck to our hand. We can use this to get the spell or trap that maybe we're missing, but we are going to add the Madolche to our hand. We are then going to normal summon the Madolche. Use Madolche's normal summon effect. It is exclusive to a normal summon, which is unfortunate. It can be flip summoned, but that's not nearly as relevant. And then we are going to add to our hand an Angeli. Angeli is a once per turn. We have already used it. However, at this point, we are just trying to extend into more rank 4s. We are going to use the Meowcaron's effect to target the Gelato in the graveyard, to shuffle it back into the deck and special summon a Madolche from our hand. We are going to put that Gelato back and special summon the Angeli. Now, we are going to go chain 1 ticket because it is mandatory. We're going to end up summoning the Gelato out from the ticket, which is a mandatory effect. And because, again, Gelato is not once per turn, we will use its effect because Meowcaron is a beast, something that I think really gave this deck a lot of synergy because Hoot Cake was really our only beast because we were not playing the other ones like Bapple. So we're going to use the Gelato's effect to add Madolche Dessert. This card is incredibly powerful. I think this is a mandatory one of in the main deck. I tried it in the side. I just felt like the end board wasn't as powerful without this, especially in Snake Eye format, where we need to constantly be bouncing shit back to the deck or the hand. We don't want that shit hitting the graveyard, and we definitely don't want it staying on the field. But what this does is it targets 2 effect monsters on the field. One of them has to be a Madolche. You can even target, the second target can be even one of your monsters still. Return them both to the hand in extra deck. Then you can special 1 Madolche monster from your hand or extra with attack equal to or less than the returned monster's total attack. This doesn't have a whole lot of synergy with Meowcaron or the Xyz monsters because the Xyz monsters do need material to really do stuff, minus the Glass Souffle. However, in the Meowcaron, it's not a proper link summon, so it doesn't add a Madolche from deck to hand. However, this can summon out Sistart if for some reason you cannot get to it, or you can just special 1 from hand. The main go-to here is that you're bouncing a monster on your opponent's board back to their hand, so hopefully they cannot use it as link material, especially in Snake Eyes where at some point, no thanks to Fiendsmith, they're committing their normal summon. We're then going to continue with our turn. We're going to activate the Chateau, use the unactivated effect to shuffle all Madolches in the graveyard back into the decks, and then we'll use the Chocolate a la Mode's effect to detach 1 more time, because again, it is not a once per turn. We can only do it as long as Pudding Cess is material, so we will detach the Pudding Cess to special summon 1 more Madolche. We will special summon another Gelato, use Gelato's effect to get the Promenade out of the deck. So officially, we have acquired all of our Madolche spell and trap cards. We will then overlay into another Teacher, Glass Souffle. We have not used her Shuffle effect just yet, but we do want her for our end board because being able to touch our opponent's graveyard is a very valuable asset in the upcoming format. And then we will link 2 into the Madolche Sistart. Now, because the Madolche monsters have hit the graveyard, we will use Glass Souffle to put back the Meowcaron and the Chocolate a la Mode, so that way we can use them later in the game. And we will then overlay again into the Queen Tiramisu, and we will put it in a different zone, and then we will overlay that into the brand new Madolche Queen Tiara a la Frage. I probably fucked up the pronunciation of that, but basically it's just a quick effect Tiramisu that we can only use on our opponent's turn. It does not target the cards that it's going to shuffle from the graveyard back into the deck, and it does not target the cards on the field that it's going to bounce back to your opponent's deck. Madolche Queen Tiramisu is easily one of the most powerful Xyz monsters because it does no targeting whatsoever. It has the word up to, which means it does not have to shuffle back the equal amount, so it's equally more powerful to do that on your opponent's turn. And there's a lot of strategy going into Yu-Gi-Oh these days, being able to dodge targeted effects. So Madolche Queen Tiara a la Frage being able to not target anything in its graveyard or anything it's bouncing back from the opponent's field is just incredibly powerful because your opponent can't dodge it. So if they try to use quick effects, tributes for cost, and then summon something else, you're just going to bounce it back regardless. And then to end our turn, we are going to set the 2 trap cards and even the crossout designator in our hand. There is a safe chance that that crossout wouldn't be on our end hand if our opponent had any form of interruption during our turn. But we do end, of course, with an Ash Blossom, and we never actually used the Vernisylph Misting Seedlings because it wasn't necessary. But there are hands where you do need to use these cards, but we will talk about that more when we get to the deck list. So what we end on here is essentially Sistar is pointing at Madolche monsters, which means your back row is safe from targeting and from destruction. Your opponent cannot use just Harpy Feather Duster or Lightning Storm without getting the Sistar off the board. Your opponent cannot use Cosmic Cyclone because it targets. Your back row is entirely safe as long as she is on the field and pointing at a Madolche monster. On top of that, we have Glass Souffle, being able to meddle with your opponent's graveyard if necessary, or just meddle with your own. We have the Tiara a la Frage, which can bounce stuff on your opponent's field back to the deck. We then also have the Madolche Dessert, which can bounce stuff back to your opponent's hand and just proc a handful of other things. And we have Promenade, which can negate Dark Ruler no more because it target negates a card as long as you shuffle back a face-up Madolche or a Madolche from the graveyard back into the deck or the hand. And yeah, it can negate the Dark Ruler no more, which is incredibly powerful because if Dark Ruler no more could hit this deck, we'd be in a lot of trouble, especially since Dark Ruler no more is going to become a lot more powerful in the upcoming format. And then, like I said, we have the Cross-Eyed Designator, which hypothetically would not be in our hand at this point in the game. But just pure Madolche, like, end board, this is incredibly powerful and very strong against a lot of the format-dependent decks right now. Being able to touch your opponent's graveyard, for example, in a Fiendsmith scenario, you'd be able to put back those light fiends so that way they can't summon them. In Snake Eyes, you could put back the targets for the Flameburge, because thankfully Glass Souffle can chain 2, it's chain 1. Its quick effect to detach puts a Madolche in the graveyard, and then it can immediately chain 2 because a Madolche is hitting the graveyard at that exact moment. So it can chain to the Flameburge and then chain to itself to be able to put back the targets the Flameburge targets, so that way you can't summon off Flameburge. Tiara a la Frage, of course, being able to bounce shit from the Snake Eye board or even the Fiendsmith board so they can't get full Fiendsmith combo or Beatrice. And then, of course, target negation and another bounce. By no means is this going to kill Snake Eye because Snake Eye runs 21 hand traps and we do definitely get hurt from too many hand traps. But let's just jump on over to the deck list. So this is still a work in progress, like I said, with the Fiendsmith Chimera deck. This is something I've still been toying with, messing with ratios, just messing with different builds. I have messed with a more board breaking style deck where you kind of want to go second, but at the same time you want to see those go second cards, which isn't always a possibility. But we are running a small handful of hand traps. We are running Ash Blossom Joyous Spring. We are running Herald of the Orange Light because most of the Madolches and all of the Vernisylphs are fairies. So we just have that access to that extra hand trap that is very powerful. We do run 2 Fenrir. I was trying 3. There are just scenarios we don't want to see Fenrir. Madolche heavily benefits from seeing only in-engine cards, so we want to make sure we see the Madolches as often as possible. And seeing Fenrir more often means we're seeing Madolches less often. So I cut it down to 2, but Fenrir is just very good because, again, it's another body. You can summon it before the pet and then not lock yourself, but we can also summon it off the Vernisylphs. We can discard it with Vernisylphs to summon it. What I like to do is I will special summon Fenrir, use Fenrir to add Fenrir, and then use one of the Vernisylphs. And because they revive on resolution, an Earth monster, you can summon out a second Fenrir. What's worse than 1 Fenrir? 2 Fenrir. We are then running 3 Madolche Angeli. This is one of our 1-card starters. It's also just really good to be able to like summon a monster that can't be destroyed by battle. So like if you can't really like get rid of the Hoot Cake for whatever reason, you still have that monster that just can't be destroyed by battle, or whatever you summon off the Angeli. 2 Hoot Cake. Hoot Cake's good, but he's heavily dependent on what you have in the graveyard, or if you have a monster in the graveyard. You never really want to be normal summoning this card. However, you still want the Madolche numbers. So we do run him at 2. We don't really want to see him in the opening hand if we can help it. It's not the worst case scenario now that Meow Corona is in the deck, because then you can still special summon stuff from your hand. But you never really want to see him. We do run 2 Madolche, because Madolche is exclusive to normal summon. The combo used to be normal summon Madolche, add pet. But with all these target hand traps like Imperm and Veiler, Mortar can't affect this, but Imperm or Veiler, you don't really want to get hit by one of those with this on the field and you don't have Salon, because then you've consumed your normal summon. It also just competes with a normal summon, because if you open this and Angeli, I'm firing Angeli first. I'm not going for Madolche, because Madolche is a little bit more exposed in that regard. 2 Messengelato, again, you don't want to see him in the opening hand if you can help it, because he conflicts with essentially just the concept of the deck. He wants to be special summoned. You need a beast on the field, and you don't want to be normal summoning this guy. He doesn't do anything. But you do want to, because you want to be able to get as many of the Madolche spell and traps from your deck to your hand as possible in one turn. And if you open one of them, it's not going to kill your synergy for the most part. 3 Madolche Pet, like I said, this is kind of the one you always want to see in your opening hand, or hopefully Madolche doesn't get negated when you get to it. It's just very powerful, being able to level modulate the pudding cess, so that way you can go into bigger plays. And the only downside to this card is it locks you into Madolches, but again, we are not special summoning very many cards other than Madolches. Then we got the 1 Pudding Cess. I would not recommend running 2 of this. You don't ever want to see this open in your opening hand. It does have some good like synergy here. There are scenarios where you can put this on your end board in like defense mode, so that way your opponent, like if they tack into it, you just get to destroy a card on your opponent's field. It's very powerful. And then also like the 800 attack and defense when you have no monsters engraved doesn't really come up all that often, but it's primarily just here to get to the Chocolate Olive mode, which lets you extend into further plays. Vernisylph of the Flourishing Hills. There are builds that are running like 3 of this. I think it clogs up the deck. This is probably the less synergistic Vernisylph, because its discard effect does not search a fairy, it searches a Vernisylph. So you're going to use this to get to the duck, and then the duck's discard effect adds a earth fairy, which of course is Petting Sessur or Angeli. For the longest time I thought Madolche was, but she's a spellcaster. So we want to get to the duck. The duck allows us to get to a handful of special summons and gets us to our 1-card combos if possible. You're not really ever adding pet off of this, because if you add pet, then you have monsters engrave, so you're not going to be able to use her effect, but it is what it is. 1 Called By, 3 Cross Out. I've been toying with 2 Cross Out, but there are just scenarios where you always want at least one of them in your hand, because hand traps are a problem. So we just want to hit as many hand traps as possible. 1 Chateau, 1 Salon, 1 Ticket. We don't need more of these in the deck. There are like some decks that I've seen run 2 Salon, because you do want to see Salon as much as possible. But if you see 1 Salon, and then like if you have more than 1 slot in the deck, you risk opening both of them. Not very common, but it does happen. 3 Prosperity. The deck does like no fucking drawing. If you were running one of the Vernisylph cards specifically that I'm not running, it does have a draw effect, but we are we don't draw. So Prosperity has like no downside. The only problem with Prosperity is you do, in like a grind game, want as many of your Madolche names as possible. We do run 2 talents, because I want to punish scenarios where I do get hand trapped and I don't have these guys, because then I can maybe draw cards, rip something from my opponent's hand, etc. Imperm, because Imperm target negation is still incredibly powerful in the current format. Madolche Dessert, like I said, I just felt like this was like a mandatory in the deck. I was running it in the side, and it just didn't feel like it. The end boards didn't feel as powerful as they could have been if I did have this card. Promenade, of course, can negate any card on the field. It's a target negation of any card on the field, so it helps us dodge Dark Ruler. It can use its effect to negate like Duster or something if you don't end on Assist Dart. For the extra deck, we are running the Abyss Dweller. That's a rank 4 deck, and Abyss Dweller is still very powerful against stuff like Snake Eye, very powerful against Yubel because they can't get their shit out the graveyard as easily. And there are scenarios where you can make this before you lock yourself. Zeus, we are running an Xyz deck. There's very few scenarios where you do this because the one thing Madolche does is if they get to turn 3, they probably are OTKing you, so you don't really need to make Zeus. But there are scenarios where Zeus happens because maybe you want to send instead of destroy, but at the same time, we bounce. So there's very few scenarios where Zeus comes up, but it does come up from time to time. 2, Chocolate mode, because if you're playing against like Cash or something, they rip one out the extra deck, you still have the other. But also Chocolate Ala mode is not a once per turn, and if you somehow can get another one on the board on your next turn, you're probably just winning the game at that point. 2 of the Tiara a la Frage, because again, we kind of want to have possible like solutions for prosperity if we need to go for 6. So we want to kind of have 2 of each. There's not really a scenario where I would go 3 of each, but Tiara a la Frage is the best Xyz monster in the deck. Actually, no, I'd give that to Glass Souffle, but just we need this card for our end board for sure. Tiara Misu is so we can OTK essentially. She is not a once per turn. I want that to be noted. She is a once per copy. So if you summon out more than one on your 3rd turn, or if you're going 2nd, you can bounce like up to 4 cards from your opponent's field back to their deck. And this is basically how the deck can just OTK, because Chateau also gives 500 attack and defense to every Madolche on the field. So we're hitting them multiple times with like 2,000 plus attack. Glass Souffle, this is how we can kind of try and play through hand traps as much as possible, target negation, Nibiru, etc., etc. The only thing this can't protect from, for the most part, is Imperm. Typhon comes up. Not very often, but Typhon comes up. Again, another Xyz monster. We go into fresh Sistart, 2 of them. Again, Sistart's really good because as long as you have Madolches in the grave, this thing can't be destroyed by battle. And if on your end board you feel absolutely necessary, you can use Glass Souffle to target it with Glass Souffle's effect, so that way it is unaffected by monster effects and it can't be destroyed by battle. So this thing could be a 2k tower with Chateau on the board pretty quickly. 1, Meowcarone, because Meowcarone is very powerful. Being able to basically add what you're going to summon off of its 2nd effect is very helpful. You can use this to add Messenger Gelato and then shuffle 1 back from the graveyard to summon the Messenger Gelato from hand and then Messenger Gelato effect, or just more extenders. And then we do run the Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. I have yet to actually summon this because the deck does lock you, but I have seen scenarios where this can come up. Madolches flood the board very quickly, so just kind of summoning this and just taking one of your opponent's monsters helps for like the go 2nd potential if you can somehow flood the board without summoning Pet. One thing I forgot to mention is the Vernisylphs, when you use their effects, do lock you into Earth effects. So you can't just like summon out Zeus after making these effects and use Zeus's effect, because you will be locked. But for the most part, that is the main deck and the extra deck. As for our side, this is all still very experimental. Side deck is very dependent on what you're going to. But Pankratops, Madolche hates Skill Drain, and Skill Drain is very popular in the current format. Fenrir cannot out Skill Drain, so we need the next best solution, which is Pankratops. And sure enough, Pankratops is an Earth monster that can be special summoned from the Vernisylphs. But then also it is, again, able to just out Skill Drain or other floodgates very easily because it tributes itself from the field to pop a card. And it's very hard to interact with that. Then we have like other cross-out targets like Veiler, Mourner, Ghost Ogre, because if they Ghost Ogre, you're like back row, that can actually hurt a lot. Butlerusk, and we have Secret Village in the back. Butlerusk, this is something that Madolche players have been doing for a while. They can lock you. If you don't have spellcasters in your deck, it's really hard to play against Madolche if they manage to set this up. But when Butlerusk is normal summoned, which thankfully for us, we get 2 normal summons, he is able to add any field spell in the game to your hand. When they were designing this card, they were not thinking that we're going to have overly powerful field spells, were they? But yeah, you can use Butlerusk to add Secret Village of the Spellcasters, and sure enough, Butlerusk is a 1500 Spellcaster. So it's going to be hard to kind of get over him if you are playing like Snake Eyes, unless you have the Witch specifically. We have Nibiru, again, just another cross-out target. We have 3 Cosmic, 3 Dark Ruler, because, again, Madolche struggles going second, heavily struggles going second. So we want some sort of solution for that. You could run evenly. My thing is I don't really want to run too many board breakers when we're running so many hand traps as it is. It kind of conflicts with what you're trying to do with the deck. If you are running hand traps, you're making your opponent's board hopefully weaker and easier to break, so it makes no sense to run board breakers that are designed to break overly powerful boards. And then we do run one more Promenade in the side deck. I had one extra spot, one flex, and Promenade is still just very powerful. Being able to just kind of have more than one on the board is somewhat helpful. It is a hard once for you can only use one effect of it and once per turn, so that's why we have it in the side, because there are just scenarios where maybe you want to see this in the opening hand. So but that is all I got for you guys today, so I do want to thank you all for watching today's video. I again am a big fan of Madolche. It is my pet deck. I'm probably going to be playing this heavily in info format because Madolche cards are going to be a lot cheaper than buying the Fiendsmith cards. But with all that, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, comment below what your thoughts are on this deck if you are a Madolche fan. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!